Good morning, 10th graders. I am getting ready to start our next book. Now, I have never taught this book in my classes, and really it's going to be because of the reason we're going to start and talk about here. I want to point out that it is the same author that wrote our last book, and I'm giving you these two books because in this time period where we have lots of stress and negativity surrounding us, I figured something with some positivity and some, practical advice would be really useful. Okay. But I like this book better than Tuesdays with Maury, by the way. I relate more to Tuesdays with Maury because I'm a teacher and I believe so strongly in pretty much everything Maury argues for in that book. The way students and teachers should interact, the importance of doing things you love, the importance of coming to terms with our death much sooner than we, have to. All of these are things that, have been a part of my life since before I read that book. So it was nice to read that. But I like this book, The Five People You Meet in Heaven, better. All right. So we're going to start it today. We're going to kind of stretch this out over the next few weeks and get as close to the end of the year. I believe I've got this set for 3 weeks. And if I do, it will get us to, I think we'll have a week left before the year ends. I may be wrong on that. But it may actually be all the way up till the end. So enough prefacing, let's get started with this book, okay? So today on Monday, you had the first 9 pages of this. And I made sure to put in the notes, and I'm not sure if you saw it or not, that you needed to look at the little italicized part that kind of starts before the book because Mitch Albom knows that there are certain people that are going to have a problem with this book. So I hope you read it. I'm assuming a bunch of you didn't. Okay, so let me read this to you. It's 2 paragraphs. It says this book is dedicated to Edward Beekman, I don't know, name I can't pronounce, my beloved uncle who gave me my first concept of heaven. Every year around the Thanksgiving table, he spoke of a night in the hospital when he awoke to see the souls of his departed loved ones sitting on the edge of the bed waiting for him. I never forgot that story, and I never forgot him. Everyone has an idea of heaven, as do most religions, and they should all be respected. The version represented here is only a guess, a wish in some ways, that my uncle and others like him, people who felt unimportant here on earth, realized finally how much they mattered and how much they were loved. So he's indicating that this may not be your view of heaven. And to be honest with you, it doesn't like have major conflicts with the Christian view of heaven, but there are some definite issues that this isn't something that the Bible mentions. Okay, and a lot of people immediately become offended by that. Guys, this is a fiction book. It's not intended to be a religious text. Stop being so overly sensitive about things that you don't need to be sensitive about. All right. He is not trying to convince you that your view of heaven, which by the way, I mean, none of us have been. Okay. He's not trying to convince you that your idea is wrong or that in any way your faith is wrong. What he's trying to do is just present a fictional story that the message there is for people who don't feel like they're important on earth, which, guys, that's a lot of us. A lot of us feel like we're not important, like we don't matter. And he's trying to write a book that lets you know that even these small things that we do could have major impact on other people that we don't realize. But he's saying that, when for him, his idea here, his wish, he said, would be that when we get to heaven to realize how much we did actually impact people, how much we were cared about, even by people we may not have realized. Okay. I think that's beautiful, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. All right. Now, do I think that's what happens in heaven? Not really. Although I agree with him. I wish this is what happened. This would be a terrific way to start eternity, but I don't think it's what happens. But, it's still pretty cool. The story's amazing. All right. So, as we get started, it begins with, interesting enough, a chapter called The End. That's the very first chapter. And that's so that, again, much like Tuesdays with Maury, we know how this story ends in a lot of ways before it even gets going. And that's important. That's a neat writing style because it allows you to quit worrying about what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what's going to happen, and lets you focus on the message. Mitch Albom's books are really built around the message. Some are more narrative based than others. Okay, Tuesdays with Maury is not very narrative based. This one is. This one's exceptionally narrative based. This is a story. All right. Okay, so we get our main character here. It's an old man named Eddie, who works as a mechanic, basically at a stationary like carnival. This thing doesn't move. It's an attraction to appear. The Northeast has a lot of these on like old boardwalks and stuff. Most of them are older. Most of them are most of them have been shut down, to be honest with you, because of safety reasons and stuff like that. But we get a lot about Eddie in this first little bit. We find out Squaw. I've got the text over here on the right side of my screen in case you're wondering. Um, Eddie was a squat, white-haired old man with a short neck, barrel chest, thick forearms, and a faded army tattoo on his right shoulder. His legs were thin and veined now, and his left knee, wounded in the war, was ruined by arthritis. He used a cane to get around. His face was broad and craggy from the sun, with salty whiskers and a lower jaw that protruded slightly, making him look prouder than he felt. He kept a cigarette behind his left ear and a ring of keys hooked to his belt. He wore rubber-soled shoes. He wore an old linen cap. His pale brown uniform suggested a working man, and a working man he was. Guys, this is great description. This is a terrific way to describe this guy, and he's a very stereotyped character. The old tough guy who's working at a place and just he's all about his job, and that's all there is to this guy. A lot of details give us that. The military background is a big one. There's a lot that goes with this. All right. He does a neat thing with counting down with like 50 minutes left. 30 minutes left, 20 minutes left of his life. And it keeps us wanting to know, how does this guy die? Because it seems like an average everyday thing. I mean, he is older. It says it's his birthday. He's turning 83. But for all intents and purposes, he seems like he's still pretty healthy. So we get some interesting things that make him stick out. So in our initial like physical description, we get a very stereotypical character. But then Albo starts adding in some other like indirect characterizations. Some of them are even direct characterizations. What I'm about to read is direct. That tell us Eddie's different. Okay, children liked Eddie. Think about that for a second. Usually older guys that are tougher like him, tattooed and got the beard and stuff like that, aren't always the children are kind of scared of him sometimes. But kids love him. There's something about him that sticks out to them. It says not teenagers. Teenagers gave him headaches, but that. No offense, I love you guys, but y'all have a habit of that sometimes. In general, not to me. So it says like they were drawn to him, just something about him. We see an interaction with one of his co-workers. Again, this is indirect characterization. Now, the last thing I told you about children liking him is obviously direct characterization, but this is indirect when he points out that this guy Dominguez, who he works with, is talking about going to a family party and things like that. And Eddie starts off with the gruff old man stuff, but then he gives him money to buy his wife something. Again, this is a very indirect characterization. This is a kind man. He comes off gruff, he comes off hard, but there's really more to him than that. We're still getting the countdowns. Lots of little short sections, which is really a hallmark of newer writings. You think back even to stuff like Fahrenheit 451, they still broke it up into these little sections. But we start seeing this develop in the, I'd say 1900s, really. You start seeing these small sections because, we're just not people who pay great attention for long periods of time. All right. So let's see. It's getting shorter and shorter as we get closer and closer to the end of his life. Now we get this book does a good job, and I wish more writers did this, who really are trying to push messages. And I think that's what makes literature, and entertainment writing. Okay, a lot of people would give me flack. A lot of other teachers would give me flack for teaching this book and Tuesdays with Morrie in a class because the literary value to them is not high. They're wrong. Okay, the literary value to these stories is exceptionally high because, to me, one of the defining features of something being literary is that it has to have a message that's intended to live beyond the words of the story itself. Okay, you may have read Harry Potter when you were a kid. There's no literary value to that book. Is it written well? Sure. Is the story good? I mean, yeah, it follows most of the conventions of stories, but that is only intended to be contained in that book. There's not any big lessons. There's a couple of little small things, but they're not things you didn't know before. All right, the value of friendship and all this kind of nonsense is not a really deep discussion. Books like this, on the other hand, there is that discussion. And what Album does to point that out is you'll have the story, and then all of a sudden this really philosophical section will be interjected. And here's part of that. This line, and it just tells you, it says, no story sits by itself. Sometimes stories meet at corners, and sometimes they cover one another completely, like stones beneath a river. The end of Eddie's story was touched by another seemingly innocent story months earlier. So he's already laying in the groundwork for one of his messages, and there's several really strong messages in this book, but one of them is the fact that, we're not, and this is a famous line from a religious writer, Thomas, I think his name is Thomas Merton. I don't remember exactly, but it's a famous line. It says, "No man is an island unto himself." It's not a line from him. There's a book he wrote. It's actually a line from John Donne, a British poet from a long time ago. All right. But what he's basically pointing out here is that, no matter how much you think you're by yourself or that your decisions only impact you, that they don't. All right. Your day-to-day existence, no matter how bland it is to you, has touched other people's day-to-day existences. And yes, probably 90%, 95% of those, it's not a major impact, but some things are. And a lot of times we may realize, the impact we've had. A lot of times we don't. And he's pointing that out. This seems like such a benign story here. He's talking about a guy who lost his keys at the park. But what we're going to see, and if you've already done your reading, what we're going to see is that those keys fell into one of these machines and caused some wires to fray, and it's going to be the very reason that this man ends up dead. Something that seems so small and minor actually took the life of another person. And we're going to see throughout this book that how little details that we may have missed and things that happened impacted other people. And that's the lesson, the major lesson he's trying to teach us. And that's a responsibility, guys. It doesn't mean we have to be nervous about it, but it lets us realize that we do have impact, no matter how small we may think we are, we're not. And that we need to think about the things we do and the things we say and how we behave, because we never know the impact that that's going to have. We tend to think about, how things impact us, not how they impact others. And even when we do think about impacting others, we think about impacting our loved ones. We don't think about how we could impact total strangers. How a chain of events could be set into place because of one of our small actions that could end up being, saving someone's life or ending someone's life just because of the decisions we make. And, some things you can't help. This poor guy here, his name is Nicky, who lost his keys, did not do it thinking I'm going to kill someone ever. It happens. I lose my keys all the time. All right. But the thing is that we need to see how connected we are. If we could really realize how connected we are as people, we could maybe not have some of the problems we're having right now with this coronavirus business, as everyone panics and freaks out and is worrying about themselves instead of worrying about others. And I realize in some ways we have to worry about ourselves. You have to worry about feeding your family. I understand why a lot of people out right now are wanting to get back to work. I understand that you want to be able to provide. That makes perfect sense. You wanting to go out and get your hair cut is ridiculous and stupid. And if you're willing to put people's lives at risk so you can get that done, you're a selfish person. And that scares me, that our society not only is like that, but is completely condoning that sort of behavior. I mean, Georgia just opened up tattoo parlors again. Who needs to get a tattoo in the middle of a pandemic? I mean, crap. I mean, as a person with tattoos, a lot of people shouldn't have them, period. So why are we, some girls are going to get a dolphin on her ankle here and in the middle of a pandemic, that's the most important thing. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, but we need to realize that even the smallest actions like that could have lasting impact on others. All right. So, let's see what else we got. It says 14. We're nearly at the end of our reading for today. We get 14 minutes until his death. Again, it's getting very slowed down. This is a suspense mechanism. We talked about it with Fahrenheit 451. As you start to slowly see time get shorter and shorter and shorter, we're building to something usually. Because, look, 14 minutes in the next section is 12 minutes. And we see a really important character show up in the 12-minute section. This is this little girl who we're going to see again. Just, she's going to be a continuing thought in the back of Eddie's head as this story continues, as he goes through his progressions through heaven. So this little girl comes up, and it's obvious she knows Eddie. She's probably a little girl who, mom drops her off at this place, which is sad. But she comes up and begs him to make her a little animal out of pipe cleaners. And, you get this little sad backstory about, her mom didn't drop her off. That's right. The mom's off riding rides with her boyfriend and kind of left the little girl on her own. So Eddie makes her this little animal. And what we're going to see in a minute, well, let me not go ahead of myself. Some of y'all may be just reading this section that I told you to read today, so let me not spoil things. But again, we had narrative, and then we have, right when we get to the ending section here, and I forget exactly where y'all end. I know it's on page 9, which we're getting onto, so if I get a little ahead, apologies, or if I don't totally finish. But we get another one of these really good philosophical sections. How do people choose their final words? Do they realize their gravity? Are they fated to be wise? By his 83rd birthday, Eddie had nearly lost everyone he'd cared about. Some had died young, some had been given a chance to grow old before disease or an accident took them away. At their funerals, Eddie listened as mourners recalled their final conversations. It's as if he knew he was going to die, some would say. Eddie never believed that. As far as he could tell, when your time came, it came. And that was that. You might say something smart on your way out, but you might just as easily say something stupid. For the record, Eddie's final words would be, get back. And I know that's where we end. It kind of gives you a little bit of suspense. Think about it. You know, suspense doesn't have to be what you think about, like within horror movies and stuff, where music and stuff forces the suspense. He says, get back, and we're like, wait, what happened? And we know it's coming. But that line about how do people choose their final words? Do they realize their gravity? Are they fated to be wise? It's kind of, again, this idea about thinking about death, which is a common theme for Mitch Albom's books. All right. It just is. And I know it seems morbid, but a lot of you in your test seem to get the value in this. It's not about being morbid. It's not about like dwelling on it and being scared of it. It's about realizing that you have a limited time on this planet. You don't have as much as you may think. Some of you may live to be 83, like Eddie. Some of you may live to be older. Some of you may live to be much, much younger than that before you die. And we have to realize that all the time we have on this earth, whether it's very, very short or very long, and the big picture is all very short. And we should do something powerful with the time we're given. All right. I've told some of you this story before, but my father passed away at the age of 42, which is the age I am now. And that really is what's made me think about death a lot this year, and the concept of, if I was to go, because of my heart issues and things, there's always this option of me having, a bad heart attack and that being the end. But one of the things that makes me not scared of death is that I feel like I have done a lot of the stuff I wanted to, and then I feel like my life did have meaning. Being a teacher and being able to interact with some of you, and this hasn't been the easiest year for that for me, and I want to apologize. I haven't interacted with students the way I used to. It's been a very stressful year, not just because of what we're going through now, but because of things before. But when I started teaching, my relationships with my students were the most important things to me. And I built some really strong ones. And I know that if tomorrow is it for me, I've had people who I've had impact on, hopefully for the better. So we're going to be thinking about that as we get into this, because we're going to see how much impact we have on the lives of others, because that's kind of the key in this book. The 5 people you meet in heaven, Eddie's going to meet 5 people literally, and each of them are people who seem like kind of almost minor, at least I know most of them, I believe, are kind of minor elements of his life, but he's had major impact on them, and he didn't even realize it. And the point of this book is to realize that you matter. It's not just you matter to God, because we all do, but it's that you matter to others too, and to people you don't even know. And it may not be that they sit down and think about you specifically, but your actions have meaning. They have impact. And whether you're a kid, whether you're a teenager, whether you're an adult, whether you're an old man or old woman, all of them do. All right. Okay, that gets us through the Monday reading. So I love this book, guys. I enjoy talking about it. I've never gotten to teach it before. Y'all are my first group. May never teach it again, but I felt like this is a perfect time to break it out and to kind of ease us into the end of the year with something, useful. All right. So anyway, guys, I hope you have a great Monday, or Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever you see this. And I want you to know how much you all matter to me. All right. So keep reading this, get something out of it, and let it impact you. Don't let it be a momentary impact. Let this have some impact long term for you. All right. Okay, guys, have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will talk to you again soon.